This is your girl, Sada Star, coming to you with another episode of A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman, the official podcast of the Easy Breezy Life community. Before I jump into today's topic, if this is your first time joining us, the Easy Breezy Life is a community of strong-willed women who understand that it can be so challenging to manage faith, family, life, and pursue our goals. Well, here at the Easy Breezy Life, you're going to find a community of like-minded women who are just as fierce, focused, and fired up as you are. It's also important that I let you know that everything we share on this platform is for education and entertainment purposes only. Because we believe that the Easy Breezy Life is a group project, we want you to seek out professional help in every way, shape, or form that you might need it. We are going to take a brief break, and we'll be back with this week's episode. Want to know how I saved tons of money on a Caribbean vacation while earning cash back? It's easy. The answer is Rakuten. Sign up online today using the link in our episode notes so you can start saving and earning cash back on your favorite online stores. Welcome back. This is season 8 of your favorite auntie, Sada Star, talking about marriage chronicles. Sis, I have missed thee. I have missed you so much. I know that I just fell off the face of the earth last April, and I didn't really share the details of why I was disappearing so quickly. Well, the surprising news is that we had a baby. Yep. We had a baby. And if you have been following me since 2018, then you know that childbearing, or at least my first experience with childbearing, was so traumatic for me and my husband. We lost our child. We went into preterm labor. We spent 11 months in the hospital, and there was just so much pain on that journey, and adjusting to being a mom and that first part of that journey, being caregiving. It really took a lot to recover, just traumatically. And I would be lying to you if I sat here and say that the journey didn't also take a toll on my physical health. There was not a part of our lives that was untouched in a negative way by our first birthing journey, with the exception of Emmanuel being a miracle. So when I found out that we were pregnant this time around, I kept everything a secret because we had also had some loss in between this baby and Emmanuel, and I decided that I was going to even keep the pregnancy a secret from my husband for quite some time. And for the first few months, I went to appointments alone. I did not show him ultrasounds. He thought we were having a girl. I let him think it for as long as I felt comfortable, because I felt like this last birthing journey was for me. For me first as a woman, for me first as God's daughter, for me first as a mother who had suffered loss, for me first for the miracle that was this do-over. And we had gone through so much in this infertility journey, and essentially knowing that because of some pre-existing health issues, how hard it was for me to carry the prior pregnancy. My prayer to God was that He would give me a peaceful pregnancy. And it was peaceful. Not without challenges, but every time a challenge came up, God came through. And so in another season, I will go into the details of this birthing journey, because right now I'm just enjoying my tea. But I have to say that sometimes ignorance is bliss. Being a Black woman in the United States, I probably was much happier when I was ignorant, right? And now that my eyes have been open to certain things, I've moved from maybe blissful ignorance to choosing joy as often as I can, and making decisions that will put me in places and position to feel joy. So here I am. We are going into the business. So my husband and I are approaching our 10th year of marriage. Well, the 10th year of eloping, because that first year was a secretive marriage. You're going to catch a trend with me that when something is really important and special to me, I do it in secret. And people don't usually find out till like way, way later. So that's the interesting thing about being a personality, is that the people in your life think that like they're your material, as if you ain't got enough going on in your life to talk about it. And I do feel like I have to put this disclaimer out there before we start this season, because let me tell you, man, people be acting a whole fool over this podcast. Number one, if you are a person I personally know in my life, any beef we got, I've already told you to your face. Anyone who's met me in real life knows that there are multiple me's, or as the academics say, an intersection of identities that go into making Sad a star. And one of those identities is Big Is. Big Is does not always come to the surface, but Big Is very straightforward. And the people who are closest to me know that if you do something, I'm going to tell you exactly what you did, where you crossed the line, and how we can get along better by you not crossing the line again. And once I said it, I said it. So if something comes up in this podcast and I didn't tell you to your face, it's probably not about you. But if you feel like it is, that might be the Holy Spirit prompting you for a change in your life. But you don't have to worry. I will not be exposing anyone for the trash that they are this season. Nope. I allow people to do that all by themselves. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I want us to listen to this wonderful clip by a young woman named Renny Vonne on Instagram. When I found her reels where she had a persona called Dr. Mrs. Lawson, and she was talking about being a young Black African professional and the pressures we get as women to show up in marriage a certain kind of way, or to be married, or to not enjoy your singleness. She was just strumming my pain. I got married after I turned 30. In African years, that's like Stone Age. In African years, that's like being a cat lady. In African years, it's like, just hang it up, girl, because, can you even produce a child? That's how some African cultures see you spending your 20s building your career, focusing on yourself, enjoying life, and learning to love yourself before you make room for somebody else. So I say this to say that for myself in African culture, I was considered very unconventional before getting married, to the point where my dad would say, like, I'm not even sure if you're going to get married with the way that you behave. I'm not sure if a man could live with you with the way that you behave. What my dad was essentially saying was that, the toxic masculinity in West African culture does not yield to a woman of your personality. Alpha women in African culture rarely get right, or stay married. And there are reasons for that. There are traditional gender roles that people expect you to occupy in the home. There's a certain demeanor that people expect wives to have that I'm not, right? There is a drive for career that you're not supposed to have once you get married that I kind of maintained. And can I tell you what? I am married an amazing human being whose promise to me when we got married was that he would always support me in my dreams. That was the thing that made me marry my husband, that he loved me, that he was going to support me, that I didn't have to change who I was to be in this marriage. And I am so grateful because as I look 10 years later, this man has lived up to that promise. This man, dedicated an office space in our home for me to be able to be creative. This man bought me my first mic. This man makes sure that he shields me from the opinions of others and has never once turned to me and said, "You're not a good wife." And I have to tell you that of all of the blessings that I have in my life, I don't know what I did to get the exceptional human being that I get to be married to on a daily basis. Oh, your girl's getting emotional. My husband is an exceptional human being. He is so loving. He is so kind. And if there was a way that God wanted to reach me to tell me that I love you, I care about you, I see you, my love for you is unconventional, and it is unconditional. Because if you know me, I don't fit the box. I don't fit the box for a minister. I don't fit the box for any of the spaces that I fit into. But with my husband, I am and have always been enough and the apple of his eye. So in short, my husband is Jesus on wheels. Not perfect, but he models the kind of love that I strive to give and to become in the places that I occupy. So I'm going to start this season with that because we're going into so many topics. And because marriage is not perfect, I would hate for you to listen into this season and think that this season is about my marital problems. No, boo-boo. Because number one, anybody who's been married for more than 10 minutes knows that nobody's marriage is perfect. And whoever is out here posting for you perfection is a lie. Not even like lying, but just like, maybe I don't want to post on my personal problems and issues for people on the internet, right? But the truth of the matter is I enjoy being candid about some of these conversations. And he and I are part of a marriage group because we believe that marriage is ministry. We believe that marriage is teamwork. We believe that our marriage needs friends that uphold us, where we process some of the challenges. And so we try to do that within a trusted circle of friends. This being said, I'm hoping that some of the lessons that I share this season are a blessing to you in some way, shape, or form. Because if you get a nugget or two that makes your marital journey easier, then I have fulfilled my assignment as your big sis here at the Easy Breezy Life. So the purpose of today's episode is to say, let's agree to disagree. I'm going to play a short clip and we'll be right back.
You are having marital problems with my son? Oh my God, confide in me, my daughter, talk to me. What? My son is not good at domestic anything. He doesn't help you wash plates or rear the kids. I don't know where he would get it from. Maybe when he was younger and I didn't allow him wash plates and I told only his sisters to do it. Maybe that's where he got it from. But I have no idea why my son would be so horrible at any domestic partnership. I have no clue. He is carrying girlfriends in this marriage. Where would he learn such a trick from? Perhaps maybe when his father was carrying many girlfriends and I still stuck by his side. And what a shocker, he might have learned something from his toxic father. I have no idea where my son will get that from. It is a shocker to me, his mother. My son is asking you to share the financial responsibilities of the house while he squanders your money and maintains head of house. Wow, I am shocked. I have no idea where he learned it from. Maybe when his father too was collecting money from my business and spending it on young girls and I stuck by his side. I have no idea where he got it from. Oh, please, manage the marriage. This is what marriage is about, my daughter. Thank you.
This is Professor, Minister, Chair Lady, Aisata Oluwadare, and you are single, but why? Can we clap it up for Miss Renny Vonne? Can we clap it up for her? Because the way that she is so able to seamlessly move through the challenges of modern day African marriages and us going up against our African mommies who are constantly trying to check us about the way we're choosing to live, about the behaviors we won't accept, about the things that we are confronting on a daily basis was seamless. I laughed, I cried, I was saved, delivered, healed, and whole all in once listening to her clips. You gotta look her up on Instagram. Amazing talent, and just so jovial. And thank you for allowing us to use that clip to spearhead this next conversation. I'm gonna leave her link, or at least I'm going to link to her Instagram page in our episode notes. I want you to check her out, support her, clap for her, because you know that if she's speaking up like this, somebody in her personal life is shading her right now when she goes to the weddings. And you don't want to be the person at the African wedding that people are shading like, is she going to go talk about me next? Because the truth of the matter is, when you are a young Black professional, African woman who does not think in traditional cultural norms, you're going to catch a lot of flack for that. Like, I know for a really long time, people were looking at me and my husband, because we had a child with complex needs, like we weren't happy, like we shouldn't be content in life, like we were sitting at home crying, just waiting for the next baby. And the truth of the matter is that, like, we weren't. We spent so much time loving on our son Emmanuel that to sit and to lament and to cry about a child that wasn't here yet was not something we were going to do. And the other challenge for people at that time was that in the African community, people really stigmatized having a child with disabilities. And so for me, one of the ways that I protected or shielded my child was by minimizing who had access and exposure to him, because I never wanted my child with his sixth sense, because I do believe that children with needs develop a sixth sense, to ever feel like he was around people who didn't love him the way his parents loved him. I've been cautious about that in choosing nursing staff. I've been conscious that in my life, what I have found contentment with, if you are not an individual who is content, of creating distance, because I wouldn't want someone to project their feelings, their thoughts, their opinions about my marriage, about our life on me or my child. So this being said, as she talks about all these different topics, she just makes me so happy, So let's try to address some of the elephants in the room of the things she talked about. The first thing she talks about is, honestly, what does it mean to be roommates? So when I got married, I always said that, yes, we're married. Yes, I love you, but we're also roommates, which means that we gotta have a roommate contract. So I was an RA in college, so I speak a little bit differently. And when I was an RA, you had to do these roommate contracts or these roommate agreements about who was cleaning, who was doing what. And when me and my husband first got married, we needed a roommate agreement. But how many of you know that you can't just whip out a roommate agreement for your husband and be we need to agree who's doing dishes, who's mopping floors, who's doing XYZ. And eventually, in order to keep the peace in our marriage, we had to agree to disagree. We had to agree that we were going to outsource cleaning twice a month, so that our marriage could stay intact and so that we could continue to love each other like the wonderful people that we are. And so that I wasn't spending my weekends scrubbing floors and trying to make the cracks in the tile shine. I'm not that. I'm not going to be that woman. I think sometimes my mother still struggles with the fact that I'm not that woman. God bless her soul. My mom will clean a room spotless in a record time. That is not my anointing. And even if I had the anointing, I'm not sure that I would use it for that. Right? So the first thing is, no two marriages are alike. And comparison is the thief of your joy. Do not look at somebody else's marriage, somebody else's spouse, thinking if I just had that person, if my husband could just be like this, our marriage would be better. You don't know what leaning side that individual is needing to be held up on. Because everybody's got a leaning side, or what we call a blind spot. And to be able to love someone, you need to be able to love them and their blind spots. So if you're not going to do that, if this ain't what you're about, then don't look on to somebody else's marriage when you're looking at highlight reels, not knowing how they get through their day to day. There are some conversations or some things in our marriage that we have just had to agree that we're not going to be the same with. I'm a person who likes to throw a gathering. Yes, I like to spend money on my decorations. Yes, I want it perfect. And my husband's I don't understand why every time there's a social gathering, it has to be perfect. I don't understand why you got to get tablecloths and all this stuff, and we're just doing something in our house. Because it makes me happy, bro. That's what makes me happy. Okay? I grew up doing events. My first 10 years of my career was doing events, and doing them in my house makes me happy. Can I have my joy? Saying this to say, my husband's never going to agree that I should have bought those real glasses to use for our Thanksgiving dinner with our family. But I still have them. And if they break, I'm going to replace them with my money because I work. Which leads us to the second aspect that she was kind of talking about in that clip, right? Where she is talking about women, working, money, power. And so often in African culture, women are treated like assets or collateral, or like, what are you bringing that makes me look like a bigger man? Again, here I have to say that my husband's not that. My husband, super supportive and selfless. And let's just say that my marriage delivered me. It delivered me from the experiences that I'd had with men before, this idea that masculinity, or let's say toxic masculinity, was what manhood was. And learning that patience, honor, gentleness, kindness, the fruits of the spirit, joy, contentment, all of those are manhood. And because I grew up with a father who was so drastically different from my husband, sometimes even I have to resist putting him in a box, putting him in the man box, and paying attention to the fact that just like I have emotional needs, my husband has emotional needs. He may not express them the way that I do because society has not taught him to do or be that. But that does not mean that those needs are not there, that the supports are not there, that the stress is not there, that the anxiety is not there. And so in my marriage, I have learned to take more of a protective stance when it comes to my husband in the outside world. Now, people will tell you that I probably be doing way too much. And in fact, they're probably right. But here's the thing. When you love something, you cherish it. When you love something, you protect it. When you love something, and let me stop saying something, because now I sound like this territorial wife, which I am a little bit, but so what? When you love someone, you put yourself on the line for them. And I am so fortunate that my husband, more often than not, kind of just allows me to be myself when I get into that protective wife mode. And this is how our marriage functions. He loves on people so much, and oftentimes I'm raising a standard. And I had to come to accept that he's in my life to represent the love, and I'm in his life to represent the standard. And iron sharpens iron. And as we move along this journey, we both move closer to the center of being more balanced individuals. The next thing that I want y'all to remember is that what works for one may not work for the other. Sis, don't do what I'm doing, because I've been graced to do what I'm doing. I have toiled to get to doing what I'm doing. A lot of people will ask me like, oh, well, how do you do a podcast? How do you write and then also do these newsletters, and then you have like a job and all these things? Oh, it's easy. I don't do anything else. I could literally spend my whole week not hanging out with people, which is so opposite of what you would probably expect, right? That somebody who comes across so vibrant and all these things must be an extrovert. And the truth of the matter is that I have learned to accommodate people in my life. My default is to be alone and content by myself, unseen, and just creating in my space. So what works for us as a couple, as two people who are naturally introverted, doesn't work for other people. Like my mom was with us all summer while I was healing, and she was shocked by like how silent the house was, because my husband and I don't just sit around talking all day. Like, what we gonna talk about for that long? And then if you're talking that much, you couldn't possibly have the energy to do the things that God has called you to. So brevity is the name of the game in our marriage. We could sit next to each other watching a TV show and not talk, and we've bonded. Right? My husband could spend all day in his office, and it's not because we hate each other. It is because we are both internal in many ways and like ourselves and like our space. When people come into our home, we're welcoming, we spend time with them. We are happy to have them over. We like family. We love our family. We also really, really like our individuality and our space. And for some other couples, like being BFFs is their priority. The other thing, right, like, is we're right now in this place, like, is another baby coming? And my husband's like, yo, do you see our friends? They're stressed. Why would I have another child to be stressed? And I have to say that I'm open to the idea, but I'm not open to creating a tension in my marriage that doesn't have to be there, right? My husband always likes to say that babies will not guarantee us a staircase into heaven. So why would we force ourselves to have children when we don't feel ready, or even if we don't even want more, because somebody else has made a standard of how many children you should have? And I have to tell you, I have 15 nieces and nephews. Auntie Sada is very busy. And the way that we do children in my family is like everybody's child is everybody's child. So there's enough love to go around. There's plenty to do. I also don't believe that you have to be a biological mother to be considered a mom, right? So maybe I don't decide to give birth again. Maybe we decide to adopt because we really want to provide a loving home for a child that doesn't have one. So I say this to say there's a lot of norms that are not norms at all. So you have to erase this idea that marriage has to look a certain kind of way. What works for you and your spouse works for you and your spouse. And sometimes you got to keep some of them things to yourself so that other people are not haters, right? Like, I could have never told people when we had Emmanuel that my husband was totally okay with us not having another child. It seemed contrary to African culture that your first child would have special needs, and you're not automatically trying to correct that by having a second child, which is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But my husband has always been a content person. So whether or not we ever gave birth again, he was fine. Even I had to decide to give birth again when I noticed that Emmanuel was sending messages that he wanted a sibling. Like, we would go around my nieces and nephews, and when we leave, he start crying. That was like a new element. I didn't know that Emmanuel enjoyed being around other children. When I saw that he had that desire for that kind of engagement, that was when my heart, I believe, fully opened up and said, okay, regardless of my fears on the childbearing journey, I want Manny to have a friend. I want Manny to have a sibling. And in entered the love of my life. I didn't even know that I had room to love another baby, because let me tell you, I was obsessed with my son. In entered Tisha, who is just a fireball of energy, a happy baby, and has filled our house with love that I didn't even know we needed. This being said, I would never put pressure on ourselves to rush and do the next thing, because y'all, being the mom of 2 children, especially when one has complex needs, is like being a high performance athlete. The level of focus that I have to do life, I've never had to do. It's like prepping for the SAT so you can go to college, yo. It's wild. I'm just like shocked by the women in my life who have multiple children and are working and manage to be some semblance of a human being. Like, how are you doing this? I feel like something's got to go. They're like, now I got these kids, I definitely have to have less friends, because I can't give these kids what I need, give my career what it needs, give ministry what it needs, and then like have all these friends. Like, we got to cut this list down. So I always like to tell people that my circle is going from a circle to a comma, because we ain't got time. Your girl ain't got time. Brevity, please. So the next thing is, know that when I share my thoughts and opinions, those are just my thoughts, my views, my opinions. Oftentimes, no one even in my family shares the thoughts that I have. So take what is useful and leave what is not. Quite frankly, like, I do that all the time. My friends will call me, they'll give me feedback, they see like 20 million things, and I might like find 2 things useful, and I take the 2 things and I leave everything else. There's no need to be offended if I share a marital view or a view of the world that you don't agree with, especially, sis, because you are opting into this podcast, which means you can very easily opt out. And I'm also going to say bruh, because I know that I have men who listen to this podcast. Hey brothers, thank you for tuning in. I love you too. And no, there's still no easy breezy man coming at the moment, but know that you are in my heart. I am with you in spirit. But long story short, these are just my thoughts, right or wrong, what I was thinking at the time. And you are privy to them. You don't have to ascribe to them. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to take them into your soul and spirit. Nobody's forcing you to do that. You can actually listen to this podcast and go right along living your life the way you were already living it, and take it for what it is, an entertainment, maybe slightly educational, because I do seek to inform in many ways. But you don't have to agree with me to hear my point of view. And I don't need you to absorb what I'm saying for me to be whole. Okay? The next thing is that God is the glue that holds my marriage together. I don't know who is holding your marriage together. I don't know what holds your marriage together, but Jesus holds my marriage together. And so as I talk this season, I will be talking from the perspective of a girl who believes that without Jesus, we wouldn't be making it. Literally. Okay, without Jesus, I couldn't love my spouse the way I need to. Literally. I believe that without Christ in the center of my marriage would literally be jacked up. And based on the amount of trauma we have experienced in the first 10 years of our marriage, it should be that. But we don't look like what we've been through. And for me, that's because of Jesus. So I'm going to talk about God. I'm going to talk about leaning on spiritual counsel. I'm going to talk about the role that our pastors had in keeping us together and happy and whole in this marriage. And if that's not the center of your marriage, it's okay. But it is the center of mine. So I'm not going to yuck your yum, as we like to say in student affairs, and don't yuck my yum. And the next thing is, if you enjoy our conversation this season, tell a friend. Don't be stingy. Come on, sis. Share, like, subscribe, leave some stars. I was so shocked when we came up on list 15 and 35 in the religion and spirituality categories, because people don't be leaving no reviews. So I'm like, oh, you like us? You like us that much? Of course, I can see my data on the back end, which, by the way, thank you. 43 countries deep. I am grateful. We will take some time to shout each country out individually, because I believe that gratitude helps to cement what we have, but it also makes room for more. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for tuning into this little quirky girl who has a lot to say, but don't really be wanting to say it to everybody, because I feel like on this podcast, we're friends. And even if we're not friends, like Effie White says, you're going to love me, because I'm not going. All right. So tune in. Next week is episode 2. And during that episode, I'm going to be talking about Before You Do, the things that I went through, Lord, the dating scene before getting married, and the mistakes that I made, and how I came to the decision to decide on a few things that were very essential to me and important to me in a marriage, and then allowed God to direct my steps to me meeting my husband. I love you. God bless you. And I will see you next week. I always say see, but we don't actually see each other. Let's catch up next week at A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman. Bye, sis.